Hi, Seb. We're welcoming Sebastien Michaud to TechRound today, and he's going to be chatting to us about VCs, investing, and giving us advice for startups. Seb is an investor at Foundamental, which is based in Berlin. Welcome, Seb.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Seb, can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Of course. So I'm a venture capital investor at a fund called Foundamental. It's a global fund that invests in startups in the physical economy. I grew up in Italy. I'm also half English. I have a background in strategy, and I've built a scouting initiative for young technical builders in Eastern Europe.
Great. Seb, what type of founders do you look to back?
So deeply creative founders. I think creativity is really underrated in the industry currently. So the type of founders that look at things differently. I always look for founders that have a critical competence that is very relevant to what they're building, that has compounded over time. I look for craftsmanship, so founders that are immersed in what they're building and can get into the weeds of it. And I'm really, really obsessed with how they're creating that value differently. And also founders that have strong personal alignment, that the actions that they're taking, they match very strongly the vision that they say they have. And they're able to articulate very well what their motivation is, why they're doing the things that they're doing.
Okay, so it's important that they are really deeply invested in their own company and they can show that to you.
Absolutely, yes.
And what do you think makes a startup stand out in a crowd of so many startups these days?
A couple of things. I mean, it's a very personal question. I think it's always important to remind ourselves of how high the bar is, especially if you're looking for venture investments. It's not just a question of, can I build a viable business that will get to the same next goalpost, but it's a question of, am I building something that will define a category and could really, really blow up? And it's important to also for us as investors to build in the discipline that that's the bar at which we're operating and sort of analyzing companies and people. And then I think what stands out is quirkiness. So something that's different, you pick up on a deck or on an executive summary or a memo and you read about a startup for the first time and it's like, okay, I've never heard anyone look at it before in this way. I've never seen anyone tackle the market in the same way. So if you can embed that innovativeness in what you do and make it very obvious, I think that definitely stands out.
Right. So I guess it's also because there are so many startups and it's such a competitive world to be in. It's not just about being able to survive. You've got to have the potential to actually be the best.
Yes. And do it differently as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice would you give to founders that are looking for VC funding? Because, not only is the world of startups so competitive, funding is probably one of the hardest things that you're going to have to deal with. You can have an incredible startup, an incredible business idea, and an amazing team, but if you don't have funding, you're not going anywhere.
I'm going to say something that's maybe a little personal, maybe a little controversial. VCs are your last customers, your absolute last customers to deal with. And the one thing that I see a lot of founders do that you definitely don't want to do is force fit your vision, force fit your business to what you think the expectations from the VC market are. There's a lot of best practices flying around of what is the type of business model that we find attractive, what is the type of category that we find attractive. If you try to force fit into that, you might be missing out on what makes you truly special. So
Mm,
don't let VC expectations define what your business is. And the best investors will find you. The best investors will find the truly different companies, even if they don't sound familiar to them.
right. What do you think VCs are missing?
That's a good question. I think VC fundamentally is about access to talent. If you look at the statistics, if you look at where investments go, you see that there is a lot of funding that is concentrated to a handful of startup hubs, to a handful of logos and alumni networks. And it's important to remind ourselves that beyond the borders of these hubs, there's an entire world of people and entrepreneurs. And I think we're missing out on them massively. I think there is an undercurrent of excellence that is not being promoted and that we are not elevating. And that is the biggest miss. It's for one of the reasons why I focused on Central Eastern Europe, because if you look at the depth of entrepreneurial technical talent, well, I think that we've barely scraped the surface of what there is.
Yeah. So do you think that's how we start to tap into that, is to sort of shift focus a little bit?
I think it starts with the heavy lifting of actually scouting beyond traditional sourcing channels. So what would a
Yeah.
traditional sourcing channel be? Would be talking to your friends, to alumni networks from your buddies that you know. And what if we go a little bit further and we look at, we travel to countries where we haven't traveled before, that we don't hear a lot going on about. Yeah.
And what about for startups that are maybe in that position, just to flip the question around, if they're in that position, they feel like they're not getting visibility, maybe they're not being seen, what do you think they can do to be seen other than, the advice that you gave previously?
I think that's a very difficult question. You definitely want to find communities in whatever place you're in, whether you're in a city, find of communities that sort of aggregate knowledge on what is exactly the venture play. How do you actually attract capital? What does it mean for your business? Find the people who know about this in your community, get together with other founders that have the same degree of ambition, because if you connect with the people that are like you're more likely to find those answers. And if you're in remote places, in villages, so you're far away from cities, I would say find those communities online. I think community is the starting point to get yourself into this VC machine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. So what do you think are the biggest mistakes that startups make when they're pitching for funding?
I think the biggest mistake when pitching is trying to force fit into the prevailing narrative of the moment. So whenever there's a hot topic, whenever there's a business model that appeals, trying to play into that and then doing so at the risk of sounding like everything else. I think founders have a tremendous amount of pressure of adding a lot of fluff onto that pitch deck to make it sound reasonable for VCs. And what that often means is that you're kind of burying the core insights that are making you very special. It often happens to me that when I am talking to founders, I have to add an extra 30 minutes to the conversation, to the meeting that we already have, to really unearth, okay, what is it that you've observed that no one else can say they've observed? So whatever is unique about you, whatever is an insight or a distribution strategy or something particular about your product that is the key thing that makes you different, that's going to be the window shop. That's going to be at the front line of what you present to VCs.
Okay, yeah. I think it's interesting because as you've kind of sort of alluded to, it can be tempting to just try and fit a mold. And then that sort of means that people hide what makes them unique,
Yes.
but actually that's potentially what you want to lead with and sort of advertise mostly.
And there's a tremendous pressure for founders to do that because it's like, that's how I get funding, right? But the reality is the VC market expectation, those vague expectations, those shallow best practices that you hear the market have, they don't tell you anything about what it's like to build an innovative business. So they should just be ignored. And it's very different from individual advice from, say, individual investors that you trust. Those may be valuable, but whatever is market noise shouldn't feed into how you present your company, should definitely not feed into how you build your business.
Yeah. And I guess it follows that it's tempting to try and buy or win over lots of investors potentially, but actually what you probably want to be doing is winning over the right investor because you've got a long future ahead of you and you need to work together. So you need the right person. or investor.
100%. 100%. The selection process goes both ways, and it's about partnership. I mean, these are people you're going to see every month for years. You're going to have to engage with them at a very high frequency, but for many years.
Yeah,
So you want to pick the right person for sure.
for sure. And you're going to be dealing with potentially difficult, you know, great stuff, exciting things, and also some really difficult things and challenges going forward. So it's it's an important match to make, I think, from both sides, as you say.
Yes, it's the challenging times that show the personality of the people that you decided to partner with. 100%.
Absolutely. Do you have any last bits of advice for startups that are looking for investment?
I would say come up with your own definition of what innovation is, because there's a lot of people out there that speak with a lot of certainty of what the future will be. But I think we're in highly uncertain time. And I think you can absolutely redefine everything. You can redefine what a product experience is. You can redefine what a business model is. You can redefine how you build an organization and what the role of a CEO is. Everything can be redefined. This is the moment to really put in your creativity and your way of thinking into building a company, because no one's figured it out yet. So I think that's that. And if you are technical and you're in Europe, let's have a conversation. I'm right here, so ping me as well.
Awesome. That's great. And how can people reach you if they do want to chat?
I think LinkedIn is the main one because it's easy to find my name and
Yeah.
take it from there.
Cool. Thank
Appreciate
you
that.
so much, Seb. Awesome to chat and some great advice. I think, as we said, trying to get investment is incredibly difficult. And I think any advice that startups and founders can get these days is so important. And I think everything that
Right.
you've said about just like embracing your startup, embracing what makes your company unique is really cool, and it's good to hear. And I think everybody needs to be reminded of that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Cool. Thanks, Seb.